All right, Jazz Cabbage made it on again.
Yeah.
Hey.
Weed. One of these times. But
welcome to a Tuesday, Jazz Cabbage Cafe.
Another good show coming up here. We're talking about some important stuff, and get it started today. We're going to have Professor Gus Rosania from University of Michigan School of Pharmacy. He's been on before, and he was also on Hash Bash. We're going to take a look at the the segment from when he was on Hash Bash that Rick put together.
I have a great love for pharmacists. My late father was a pharmacist, and nice. My stepfather, late father, was also a pharmacist. And I worked in the pharmacy for many years. I believe I've told some stories.
Nice. Hey. We have some things to ask him. Gus is going to stay on for a while and, go through a bunch of stuff with us and participate. Cool. So he's got a lot to say, and he's been kind of vocal lately too. So I thought it'd be a good time to bring him on. Plus, we're ongoing our Hash Bash stuff, and his segment's like 7 minutes or something. So we'll put that on right around 4:20, and that'll be our break, and then we'll talk to him about some of that stuff and more thereafter. Hopefully, he'll come on like just before that if everything works out right. Of course, very rarely does everything work out right, but we'll let it roll for now.
We're pretty good. We're much better than we used to be.
Hey, I think
live broadcast number 8, right?
Yeah, I think this is 7 or 8. Yeah, plus with that.
We had it figured out. Like on the second one, everybody was pretty smooth.
And we're limited with participants right now, but we have good ones, so we're ready to we're ready to start moving forward.
These 4 people have been great, right?
And so I want to mention
5. These 5 people know what they're doing.
Yeah. So I want to mention while I'm thinking about it, of course, Medical Mondays, in which Rick and I and Colin, who's not here, participated in last night. And that was fun. I assume he'll come on soon enough. Would have thought he would have been here, but
he's probably waiting to be here now.
Yeah, he's on so many shows now, and he doesn't really have to like do the boards and stuff. Really casual about the whole thing at this point.
Yeah, Colin was a nobody. He was a nobody until we got a hold of him. Okay.
He murders a big guy on campus now, boy.
Yeah, he doesn't fuck around with like being on time and stupid shit like that.
No,
he's over that stuff.
You actually watch how you talk about him if he's not here.
Oh
yeah, yes. Eyes and ears are everywhere.
It'll come back to bite you.
Hey, Jim, I have a special request. Jim, can you pan the camera up just a little bit in your shot there, please?
Sure.
Hi, what's back there? What's that?
He just wants to see that nice slick back head of hair.
It looks like Jim is parked underneath a sphincter. I'm just going to say it.
Exactly.
It looks like
big anus.
That's his natural habitat. It just looks natural.
Someone called an innie, but
okay.
So, and also, of course, there's Planet Green Trees Thursday at 8 o'clock, and I guess Medical Mondays at 9 o'clock. And I want to remind people we had Ryan Basor on Tuesday. Ryan's going to be on Planet Green Trees on Thursday to continue that conversation, but his product launch is at the end of this week.
And right.
Botanical Company's one of the lucky places that get his products, and there's like 5 or 6. In fact, might have them right here. There's Ohm, Gage, obviously they gave him the original grant, Farmhouse, which involves Chris Silva and others, who of course was the manager of the first 2016 MI Legalized campaign and has been in the industry ever since. He's a part of that, and there's gonna be a special announcement. I'll tip it off now, assuming this isn't gonna like blow off big news all over the place, but the Redemption brand is about Ryan's journey and his story and going to prison, then coming back and like doing something substantial, and it really is nice and poetic. But he's also gearing some of that revenue toward helping out other people who have been in his situation too, and those who have been at it for a long time. So in addition to that, the idea from the people at Farmhouse, in which the Botanical Company is also using with their blessing, is to offer additional discounts for those with cannabis misdemeanors and felonies for buying the Redemption line. And I know that Farmhouse is going to do that for all their stuff. Just they started off thinking about the Redemption line, then just decided to do it for at large, as if many places have discounts.
So how do you prove that? You got to show like your prison tat or something?
Yeah, I think we're pretty, from our perspective, I can't speak for Farmhouse or whatever, but from our perspective, we're going to be pretty mellow about that. If somebody wants to like say that was their situation, we probably won't like somebody will say, I'm a felon for cannabis, I'm not going to question it too much. If it gets out of hand type thing, we might start checking it out to a degree or coming up with some standard for it. But we're somewhat the trust system right now and on that. And I think it's a great extra promotion on the whole thing. And I thought it was a good idea. And
It's beautiful.
And we're going to roll with it as well. Hey, maybe it's adopted by others. Ohm is on the list of places that have the redemption line too. Maybe they look at that too. I don't know. So that's pretty cool. And
it's real cool.
We're waiting for Gus, and maybe Rick will spin around and say he was all here. I was thinking that maybe people could share what they think we need to do next in the cannabis activism, legal, political world. We've obviously moved the needle quite a bit. We've got a lot going on. Went from felonious activity to essential business. But, for a lot of us, there's still stuff to do. And I'm curious what the next thing or a couple of things are people believe we should be looking at. Rick, you want to jump in?
Well, I'll tell you what I'd like to see our community focus on is trying to get granted forever the certain freedoms that we've been given during this COVID-19 crisis. Things like telemedicine, curbside pickup, expanded delivery, some of the different options that we have to change the way that patients or consumers interact with their retail associate. Some of those are very important long-term, and they were forbidden for stupid reasons. And now that we've exposed that those reasons are stupid and that these things function, let's adopt them forever. I think it just makes sense.
I agree with that one, 100%. You want to introduce everybody else?
All right. Yeah, I sure will. Let's start with Jim Salame. So many different credits, Ohm of Medicine, so many different things you've done. Jim, what do you think we should be working on as cannabis activists in Michigan and nationally next?
Well, nationally, it's getting people to get the Safe Banking Act passed. I think that's one of the most important features. Once that happens, I think we'll see the rescheduling or descheduling of it occur. Locally, I'd love to see social clubs start to become more prominent. So people of like minds can meet together and enjoy. I know now with the COVID and, having social distancing, that might change a couple things, but you can still be in a room with a bunch of people smoking and enjoying yourselves in a social atmosphere like that.
I don't think it's a moneymaker.
Yeah. And, but I think those are the two big things I think of when it comes to mind.
Derek Gauci, our possibly the longest member of Planet Green Trees. I'm sorry, of Jazz Cabbage Cafe. I just listened to the very first broadcast the other day. Was you and Jamie, and I was on the phone remotely. And then there was a woman that was helping us out with the Evelyn with the board at that time. Derek Gauci, the ultimate cannabis.
Remember Evelyn?
What do you think? What do you think we should be doing next, big man? What do you think cannabis activists should be focused on going forward?
Well, it's an honor that you even asked, and Evelyn was awesome in our initial days. She made it a party in there. Anyway, I was just talking about this with Jamie earlier. I think that we're far from done because, in looking into like what it actually takes to get businesses up and running, there's a lot of hurdles, as there should be in some cases, but in other instances, it almost feels impossible. And like the applications for applying for some of these licenses actually state on them that what you're doing is still illegal, and that this license in no way, gives you safety. So I think that, we still got a lot to do on all sorts of fronts, but mainly focusing on federal legalization is basically the only way to end the joke.
Yeah, that does solve problems for people in all 50 states immediately if we were to get that removal from Schedule 1 or some kind of a federal decrim. Debra Young, veteran of so many local cannabis initiatives in Michigan, guidepost for Am I Legalized and for our industry for years and years and years. What do you think we should be working on? You have so much experience prior to the cannabis industry with the Democratic Party. Tell us what your experience says we should be doing next.
Yeah, I mean, I think all along, my goal has been trying to make cannabis normal. And I think we've come a long way in that, but we still have a long way to go. Federally, we got to get on the same page federally with the whole banking thing, like Jim was talking about. It's really difficult. Although I do like the idea, Jim, talking about cannabis clubs and stuff, I still have not seen a model that's going to make any money. And I have friends who've tried, and in order for a business to succeed, you got to make money, you got to have a profit. And it just doesn't seem to be a winner to me, although I love hanging out with people and smoking weed, but I don't know about that. I think we need to work on expungements, particularly people who are still walking around dragging this on their backs around with them for years and years and years. And I also want to look at the fee schedules for licensing in the state of Michigan, because it's so high. You have to really be loaded to open anything less than a micro business, which still is a significant amount of money. You know, it's not hundreds of thousands like some of the rest, but I mean, people have to spend millions and millions of dollars to get themselves set up. And I know that was not the intention of the act. We knew it would happen, but it was not the intention. So yeah, I want to clean up and make sure that it's an affordable industry that is welcoming to anybody who wants to get involved, you know, and I mean, there's so much to be done still.
I agree with that. C Murder has just joined us. Colin MacDougall, a lot of credits, including MI Legalize, former bud tender at Bloom, a guy who's worn many hats in the community.
Fashionably late.
Fashionably late, but fashionable. That's
I don't know why.
Late but fashionable.
Well, he's wearing his hashbash shirt.
Oh, he's doing great.
Yeah.
Colin, what do you think as cannabis activists our next move is? Where should our efforts be put forth going forward?
Well, I think, expungement is the first thing that we need to get over. Then the federal banking stuff, and just descheduling it, getting it off the scheduled substances. Like me and Jim have been putting our efforts into decriminalizing entheogenic plants and fungi. I feel like that kind of has to be a part of it too. I know it's like not, but it definitely, it's like an arm or something, because it's just another same concept of a plant being, or something being criminalized for not harming you, and actually probably has more benefits to using them than harms. That's another thing that I'd like to see efforts being put forward. I think that I don't know what the beginning of the show you were talking about, but we talked on last night on Medical Mondays. There's like a couple states trying to go at it through the legislature, and I read a couple more states. I think Nebraska and Montana are going to start gathering signatures again for their ballot initiatives in those states. So I just think that more states also need to come online and write some sort of ordinances. Definitely stop racial profiling. I feel like that regardless of the legality in the state, there's still more African Americans being imprisoned for petty things, or being harassed while being pulled over for marijuana. Yeah, I'd like to see just more acceptance of it, and people stop thinking that like we have low IQs or whatever too.
Jamie Lowell, there was just a new advisory issued today by the Marijuana Regulatory Agency here in Michigan, revising standards to qualify for the social equity program, trying to make what we originally outlined in the cannabis legalization petition, make it more of a real project. What's your idea of what the next real project should be for the cannabis industry and for activism in general? You're on mute, brother.
So
It has to happen once or twice every show. And by the way, we've been joined by Gus, so we'll be able to get to him too before we take a break real quick.
Great.
People outlined my next goal for Michigan would be to deschedule. I also think that what we've already achieved is threatened, and to preserve that's got to be a little bit of a focus as well. And this whole thing is kind of complex, and there are a lot of things, but for Michigan, I think we solve a lot of stuff by just getting it off the state's controlled substances list, and it's highly inappropriate that it remains there.
Right. Well, out of out of the 5 or 6 of us that have given answers today, I think we've heard different answers from almost everybody, but that just shows exactly how much more work there is left to do. We've talked about expungement, talked about social equity. Those are unfinished things here in Michigan. Talked about some federal things that seem like they may have a little bit of a difficult uphill slope, the States Act and banking, and talked about protecting patients and and caregivers and the core of who we are as a marijuana community in Michigan. Lots of work.
Let's hear from our guest today, and then at around 4:20, we're going to take a break by way of playing his presentation at Hash Bash earlier this year. We're joined by Professor Gus Rosania from University of Michigan, the University of Michigan School.
Jamie, Eric.
Hey, man. Hey, what do you think in a couple minutes before we play your video, and then we'll talk for a long time about all that stuff. What do you think the next thing to do from a advocacy activism perspective on cannabis?
Well, I mean, I think the pandemic, there's a huge opportunity right now that is being completely missed on the hemp front. So, I mean, I don't know how straight or deep you want me to get, but I think, I mean, time's running out, you know, and if we're going to plant hemp, seeds have to go on the ground within the next couple of weeks. And there have been absolutely no preparations, no training, no nothing, no conversation, because people have been too busy either protesting or counter protesting, and I'm rather saddened by that, you know. So I think, you know, that's the present situation. I think once planting season is over and I'm willing to give up on the fact that we didn't do anything with hemp, then I can think about legalization, descheduling, on all those other things. But yeah, the opportunity we're missing right now, I think, is huge, and it's unfortunate.
Well, I think we can talk about that a little bit more later, and that's also good enough for this answer. But there's more to get into with that, and we'll do that.
Gus, I know there's been some talk recently about expanding the number of farms federally that supply cannabis for the research and development of cannabis science. And perhaps after the break, we'll talk a little bit more about that too. I know that's really a limiting factor on things that you're doing, things Dr. Sicily's doing, stuff like that.
That is right. Yeah, but you know, I'm not holding my breath on waiting for the federal government to do anything. So, yeah, I would much rather do things locally when I think there's a possibility to move things forward here within the state. Federally, I have very little faith in the system. So, but I know the opportunities that we have here with the governor in terms of moving the cannabis front forward are huge, and I wish I would just. I just want to tell people, you know, it's like we really have to work with the governor to get hemp going, you know, the next couple of weeks. So
let's talk about that some more in a few minutes. And I think if Derek's ready, we'll take a 4:20 break here, and we'll watch a video, and we'll come back and talk about all of it.
We're doing this old school. Here we go.
Shut up and sit down.
Well, Gus Rosania is a wonderful guy. He's been to Harvard. He's been to Stanford. He's currently at the University of Michigan, and he's one of the thought leaders pushing for a more Michigan attitude about cannabis at the university. Gus Rosania, professor, welcome to the 2020 Digital Hash Bash broadcast.
all right, thank you very much, Rick. Nice to see everybody.
My friend.
You fixed it. You fixed it here.
Hey, Derek, how are you doing? Yeah, Debra. I haven't met Debra before, actually. I don't think we met.
I think we did, but
So have we met Debra?
I think so. But I was just telling everybody that I'm a great admirer of pharmacists. My stepfather and my father, both deceased, were pharmacists.
Ah, that's great.
You will.
Yeah.
Look, we lined him up just to watch him mute. Come on, guys.
The class that he teaches is Pharmacide 420. Derek, the broadcast can't hear us talking, right? I mean, the broadcast is just getting the video, right?
Oh, no, they can hear us all.
No, they can hear us.
No. What? Last week you said they couldn't.
Me?
So you tell me when we're ready to go.
Good, you're good.
No, Dave said we can hear. He said he can hear us.
Everybody. So thank you, Rick, and thank you everybody from Planet Green Trees, from the Hashfish organizing. I'm so happy you're doing this virtually this year. I think.
He said he cannot hear the video, Derek.
So distancing, down the virus, stop this epidemic is a great thing for the cannabis community to get involved with. We're definitely ahead of the curve here. We have been providing healthcare to people who are uninsured, people who don't have access to regular medicine. We've been doing it all across the Michigan, Ann Arbor, and across the U.S. in those states that have been lucky, fortunate enough that have legalized medicinal cannabis. And I have to thank you for taking the lead in this, because I do believe that the situation would be far worse today if patients did not have this option of accessing medicinal cannabis treatment. So there's a lot going on right now, and I'm so happy that patients can go to dispensaries and not have to go to hospitals or doctor's office right now, because those healthcare providers do need to tend to these basic people right now. And it's a great thing that the cannabis community can keep operating, being recognized as an essential component of the coronavirus response. Having said that, I think it would be very important to point out right now, not only that aspect related to the role the cannabis community is playing as a leader in the coronavirus response effort, but also in terms of its future. And what I would like to highlight is that cannabis means jobs. Cannabis is a very high profit margin crop. It is also a very labor intensive crop. And that means that within the next few months, if the state gets serious and if we in the cannabis community get serious, this would be an opportunity to start planting large scale cannabis hemp crops here in Michigan. Whether it's under a research umbrella or a commercial umbrella, doesn't make any difference. The point is that I think this is an opportunity that we have right now. Cannabis we should be able to plant cannabis under the research paradigm. It could be done large scale all across the state. This could be a statewide research effort. And what I'm proposing that we do is we explore cannabis, hemp more specifically, for herbicides, as a herbicidal herb, as a pesticidal herb, for soil decontamination. And it could potentially be planted side by side with corn, side by side with strawberries, with other crops. That way we will be able to explore this potential use of the plant to protect or establish agricultural crops. And if those crops happen to fail for whatever reason, because maybe not enough herbicide became available, not enough pesticide or fertilizer became available, people can always then turn to the cannabis itself as a source of fuel, as a source of oil, as a source of food, not just medicine, as a source of fiber with which to feel comfort. And this could be a big boom for the state in a moment where the state really needs to be thinking not just about what's going to be happening 2 weeks and a month down the road, but actually what's going to be happening during the summer and coming in the fall. So with that, I think I just want to leave you with my optimism that the people in the state government will be thinking that far ahead. They will not just be tied up with what they're doing for the present day and for the next week and for the next month, but they actually have that level of foresight that's needed, and all they really have to do is to support this large-scale statewide hemp research effort. Just implement it across the whole state, facilitate it, protect the farmers, provide the seeds. It could be a government-led research effort so that everybody can have a job coming this summer and fall. I think this is a no-brainer solution to the economic problems we're facing. So with that, thank you all for giving me an opportunity to speak here, and I'm looking forward to continuing listening to these great presentations. Thank you.
Hey, that was real nice, man.
That was nice. Yeah.
Glad to watch that again. So, I mean, you know, so when we were asking about what we need to do next, I mean, maybe others alluded to it, but for sure, Jim and Gus both talked about things that are already in existence, but need to be worked with better than they are, like the hemp program and that kind of stuff. And I know we just talked about that right before we took this break, and then during the segment, during Hash Bash and the thing we just watched, you talked about hemp a lot. I think that's the obvious place to start here, Gus. That's what you have a lot on your mind about, and
chiming in.
Yeah, let's go with that, man. Let's start talking about current status of hemp and what we need to be doing.
Well, you know, I've been waiting for something to be done, and you know, the protests have just taken all the air out of the cannabis effort, in my opinion. You know, the protests have been largely misplaced, divided, and no cohesive message. And it could have.
You mean the protests like the recent protests at the Capitol about the COVID-19?
All of them, all the protests. I mean, they could have easily coalesced around hemp and been able to plant large amounts of hemp, you know, with state support, with funding, with insurance, okay? And this could have been demanded by, by the people for, for their future, for their children, for their well-being, for, being able to survive through the epidemic. And the opportunity was just missed because people wanted to get their nails done,
their haircuts, play golf. Exactly, Gus. Welcome to our club.
Yeah. It's nice to see people taking up an activist mindset, but I agree with Gus that sometimes the activism that they choose is not something I would devote a lot of time toward. And I think of all the things we have on our mind right now, maybe that was misplaced.
Yeah, there's the form of protest that you choose, and there's the timing that you choose, and that type of protest at this time doesn't work.
Well, plus it endangers other people's. It's reckless and dangerous when you're all clumped together during a pandemic. And what is the guns about? I mean, the whole thing is just ridiculous. It's something like a South Park.
It's a political rally.
Yeah, it was a Trump rally.
Not a real.
Right. That's funny.
South Park,
like a South Park
rally
episode.
You know,
Sorta,
for decriminalized nature, we thought about going to city council, and I think another problem is not a problem, but a hurdle is the government has so much on its plate right now, and letting them kind of do their jobs and get everything set for society, and then start to hit them a little bit. But I think what we could do right now with hemp, the same thing we're trying to do with decrim nature, is just start sending them articles every week and just slowly trickle this information in to our lawmakers and let them know what's out there.
That's a
I think
good
that would
idea.
help. So
Email inboxes
like
are
that.
still being monitored by staff. There are still people that pick up mail. Yes, you get a lot of opportunities.
Oh, for
to
sure,
communicate.
especially if they're at home and bored. I mean, and they're supposed to be working. They're supposed to still be answering your emails.
exactly.
So
Gus, you're a professor at the University of Michigan. I know this has affected your class schedule and everything else too. Business with your fellows, with your peers, has it been more difficult to just operate the basics of what you do?
Well, things are changing a lot, and I welcome change. I'm actually very adaptable. I'm very flexible. So I've enjoyed the whole process. It's a challenge, and for me, it's a good challenge. If you're not so welcoming of change, I can see this being very traumatic. But the whole thing, I mean, for me, it's been quite good. Uh, I had to change all my classes to online teaching, but I had done that many years ago when I became a virtual professor. And not only did I run a virtual lab, I actually taught virtually. So I was not afraid of that. I actually wanted to put that into practice 10 years ago and I couldn't. But this enabled that readily. And I welcome that. And I'm welcoming the transition actually. I'm welcoming the entire transition. I think education minimum, we're going to have an online option that we're going to be giving everybody. I'd say, and this is unofficial. So it's unofficial, but I'd say it's just natural that we would offer this online option because, many of our students are international students and they're not allowed to, fly back into the United States. So I suspect the university is going to want to retain those students because they're actually paying tuition and good tuition. So why not? So offer them that opportunity to stay within their majors and take our classes and have them just be online. So it's happening. On the lab, on my research group side of things, well, now we're doing all the research online, and honestly, we're finding so many missing pieces in the infrastructure of the pandemic response network here in the United States that I think this is going to occupy us for quite some time. So we have to be better prepared. And obviously, we were completely unprepared. And now we have to develop the ability to handle the next epidemic, which is sure to come. I mean, as early as next year. So we've been getting hits with with viruses every single year for the past like 20 years. Every single summer or fall, we hear of a new virus that's potentially going to make it to the U.S. And we've been so lucky for so long, but I guess either luck ran out or we have just eroded our healthcare system to the point that this virus, the COVID-19, was able to penetrate. And whatever happened this year, it's prone to happen again. Hopefully, it won't happen again next year, but I would say there's a 50-50 chance it will. So we just have to prepare, and that's what we're doing. I don't think we have any choice actually. So we better enjoy it because we're not setting the agenda. It's nature and the virus setting the agenda. So I've essentially accepted it and gone on with it. So yeah. So I've been
talked about it a couple times on here that this technology to be able to do stuff like this has been around for a while, but we haven't used it in the way in the amount that we have since this issue has taken place, and it'll likely, since it's demonstrated itself so well and so convenient for so many things, will be used a lot.
That's correct. Yep.
After this, yeah.
And the technology is actually really deep. So this is actually virtual reality. This is just a step away from virtual reality. To be able to be in a room with other people and interact with other people, it's just a small step away from virtual reality. And virtual reality is a way to communicate with other human beings from everywhere in the globe that is, it cannot be surpassed by anything. It's the epitome of communication. Virtual reality is being able to be with another person instantaneously somewhere else in the globe and be able to interact with that person in a variety of different ways. I think as we're increasingly entering the virtual space, I think our minds are adapting to that. We're also becoming increasingly virtual beings in that process. And I think the evolution just doesn't end with us. I mean, it begins with us, And if this movement continues well past our lifetime, I think our children, and our grandchildren, those are the ones that are going to be very much immersed into this way of communicating. And it's not just going to be through handheld devices or computer screens. I think it's going to be pervasive in terms of our ability to just walk into somebody else's living room and interact with that person when that person could be somewhere in a completely different environment in this planet. So, and it's not just one-to-one, it's also groups of people. I think this is the future. And, we're beginning this expansion of the virtual world, and it's only going to get bigger. So it will get bigger, it will get stronger. But yeah, I find it fun, actually. So I enjoy it.
Yeah, before we get too much further into this, I think it'd be cool to talk about, there's some research to a degree. I'm sure it's very initial, but and there's a recent article about the possibility of how cannabis may regulate the entryway for the virus into the body and help in some capacity or something. Do you know much about that, or?
Well, all that is very new. So COVID-19 is a brand new disease. And you can talk a lot about other viruses, but we know very little about this virus. So everything I read, I take with a big lump of salt. Okay, not just a grain, but a teaspoonful. I just, I'm just not going to put much faith in it right now. What I do know is that back in 1937, which is when cannabis was made illegal, most of these syrups that were available for bronchitis, for colds, to treat coughs, pneumonitis, all the airway infections, catarrh it used to be called, all these airway infections used to be treated with cannabis extract. It was pervasive. So you just have to look, go into Google and search antique cannabis bottles, and you will find all these syrups that were used to treat airway infections that contain cannabis. I don't think our grandparents were dumb. Obviously, they weren't getting high because, otherwise, like we wouldn't be where we are. No, I mean, this was actually medicine, and this was a treatment for airway infections. Now, how did it work? How well did it work? We actually don't know because we're not allowed to do science. So we can't answer those questions. But the historic fact is that's the best evidence that I have for saying that, of all the treatments that have been put forth, hydroxychloroquine, like the president just said, it's got 40 years. Well, cannabis was around before 1937, and it has 4,500 years plus of use and more. So, so I would certainly, turn to cannabis before I would turn to hydroxychloroquine.
At the time that you're talking about too, the physicians at that point relied more on their personal experience than they did on newspapers or journals telling them what worked. So if they carried something in that little black bag that we often see, the little black physician's bag, not a lot of space in that bag. They only carried things they trusted and only carried things they were familiar with. And they all carried cannabis-based medicines, Gus. All of them.
Yes, that's right. And the pharmaceutical industry was very fragmented back then. It was very capitalistic, actually. So there weren't these 20 big pharmaceutical companies that we have right now. There were hundreds and hundreds of very small companies. And many of them were actually pharmacies, or they were, and those pharmacies, we used to import the raw materials from overseas or from other states, and then they would compound their own medication. So compounding, which is essentially the manufacture of the dosage forms out of the different raw ingredients, was something that pharmacists used to do in their own private practice, in their own pharmacies. And it's amazing that all these pharmacies from New York to California, Ohio, everywhere, all across the country, they would actually use cannabis in their preps that were prescribed by physicians to treat airway infections. So if it would not be, if it would not have some positive effect, then I would suspect that different people will use different things in different places. But that's not true. I mean, they were all pretty much using the same thing. And I can tell you that some of the components that were in those original cough syrups, like morphine, are still used today as cough suppressants. So when COVID patients go to the hospital, one of the drugs that are used to treat the coughs is actually morphine, and that's actually included as one of those ingredients in those cough syrup. But cannabis was pervasive, and that's one of the uses, one of the most widespread uses. So yeah, I mean, historically, I think it's absolutely true that cannabis had to have had some benefit, and we just had to rediscover what it is.
I of course don't understand any of this, but I'll read you like just the paragraph that gets right to the heart of where the hypothesis, I guess, comes from. The scientific community has recently identified the ACE2 protein as the primary gateway the coronavirus infects patients. Researchers suspect modulating the level of proteins present in a patient could prevent susceptibility to the disease. In a study completed before the pandemic, researchers had observed the combination of THC and CBD cannabinoids can lower gene expressions that produce and regulate the ACE2 proteins.
Yeah, but I think it's much deeper. It's much deeper than that. I mean, that only scratches the surface.
I think it's that simple and problem solved.
Right.
No, well,
Jamie does it again.
I was just going to say really quick, you guys,
That's
like
the Trump approach.
Park Davis, just on a side note, Park Davis was one company in Detroit that had a small tincture that was a cannabis tincture back in the day. But the thing about all our autoimmunes that have now, that are in our lives, from fibromyalgia to Crohn's to all these things that people suffer from, back in the day, before 1937, cannabis was in our food chain. And I think that helped feed our endocannabinoid system. And then when we remove that, we start to fall into this, these realms.
Is that by way of the cows eating hemp thing or another thing?
Possibly, but I think also just with cereals and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Chewing on ropes,
Chewing on ropes.
Wow.
yeah,
No,
I mean that.
go ahead, Gus.
Yeah, it's breaking. Well, so what I was gonna say is that that's true, and the other thing is we're surrounded by millions of different bacteria all the time. They're growing on our bodies. They're growing everywhere. Okay. We're also surrounded by zillions of viruses. If zillion is a number, I mean, but literally, I mean, it's like they're everywhere. They're all over the place. All animals carry viruses. We carry viruses, and it just happens that there's this one virus that becomes pathogenic, COVID-19. Okay, and why does it pick to become pathogenic? Well, because probably it found a weakness. But see, the virus needs an entryway that our bodies are actually given to it. It's not that the virus somehow manages to be smarter than us. We're actually cooperating with the virus. Now, there's ways that we can close off those entryways for the virus, and certainly strengthening our immune system is one of them. But it's about every single cell in the body and the way it can respond to a viral invasion, because our cells are continuously on attack. They're being attacked by viruses. They're being attacked by bacteria. And our immune system, yes, it responds to that attack. It helps ward off the virus, but it's not just about the immune system. It's about every single cell in the body, because our body's response to viruses is not just based on the immune system. It's actually a response in every single cell of our body that is coordinating with the immune system response. So cannabis, in my opinion, to just think of it as an immunomodulatory drug or a drug that changes this or that receptor to the virus is is not entirely accurate. I mean, because it's probably helping do a lot more than that. It's just making us a lot more resistant, not just to COVID-19, but probably to every other respiratory virus out there. So these are the kinds of things that we just haven't thought much about, because we're very much locked into this responsive, reactive drug discovery process where we're always responding to a disease, but not trying to ward off all the possibilities of diseases that are out there. And I think this is something that is now going to begin in terms of how we think about protecting ourselves from future pandemics, that we're going to have to be a lot more open about the possibility that anything could become a pathogen, and that we actually have, our bodies have to be well protected. Actually, our societies have to be well protected as well, but also our bodies, and that food and cannabis and this natural nutrition has to play a role in it. It has to play a role in it. And
for clarity,
side of that.
For clarity, I know there are some people, and maybe understandably so, in this weird times of chemical warfare and conspiracy and all that kind of stuff. You know, there's the idea that this was a fabricated virus, but the reality is, like, the epidemiologists, people looking at the series of things that have come our way over the years, have predicted that something, they've hoped that it wouldn't happen, but have predicted that something like this is very possible and it could happen. And it did. Probably it happened naturally. And then there's other things like this that could get worse, that could happen subsequently. And this isn't by somebody engineering it. This is by mutations that naturally take place. Isn't that correct?
Yes. I mean, this is happening every single year. There was Zika, there was Ebola, there was dengue, there was H1N1, there was hantavirus, West Nile virus, feline equine encephalomyelitis. It just goes on and on and on and on. There was also SARS-1, there was MERS. I mean, I can just list them up, and every single year we get hit by a different virus. I mean, this is not new. This is not new at all. It's like every single year.
Well, and as the human population of the planet grows, more people become petri dishes, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I can tell you, look at how easy people forget. Okay, we're actually in the middle of an opioid epidemic. Okay, you have forgotten about that. We are in the middle of an opioid epidemic. Okay, it hasn't gone away. It's still with us, but nobody's ever thinking about that. I mean, not even in the context of COVID, like, could COVID and the opioid epidemic somehow be related to each other? Could it be affecting, people that are, taking all these opioids and, they're taking all these drugs and is it possible that there's an interaction there? And whatever happened to the opioid epidemic? It's not even mentioned anymore. It hasn't gone away. It's still there. So that's how little memory people have, and I think at some point, hopefully very soon after the elections, people are going to start to really think about these things again, and just not get lost into these political things. It really doesn't matter who becomes president. I mean, it can be anybody. We're gonna be left with these problems. I mean, these are very serious problems, and we're gonna have to address them. So that's part of being human. It's not about just enjoying life. We actually do have to work, and part of that work involves getting prepared in case things like the pandemic is that's happening, in case those kind of things happen, and we just have to be prepared. So I think that basically cuts out our work for the next year or more. I mean, maybe actually, hopefully, it's more of a transformation in terms of how we're thinking about life, that these possibilities now become apparent. And now the good thing is that there's going to be jobs. We're going to have to do this, so there will be jobs. So that's the good thing. I mean, you can think about it as being something terrible, even if it's made up. How terrible if they made up the virus. Well, think of it as an opportunity. There are going to be jobs, and especially there are going to be jobs if we force our government to make those jobs possible. And that's what the government needs to be doing right now. It's not just about reopening this or reopening that. It's about actually making those jobs possible. And we're not going to be there, and we're not going to be there yet, because there's all kinds of problems right now. And it's not just COVID. It's also about the banking system. It's about the healthcare system, transportation. There's so many problems all around. I mean, the fact that we don't have toilet paper, to me, that's a huge problem. Okay, because I'm not going to use
toilet paper.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a good option to have.
Toilet paper, so.
I switched over to bare hands a couple weeks before this happened, so it wouldn't become an issue.
Yeah,
So
you got
don't
running
touch
water in
Jamie's
your
computer.
bathroom,
Don't mean to take away from your point, Gus. It is well taken. Keep going, man. Sorry.
I mean, it's like, this is a fact. You go to the store and there's no toilet paper. Okay, so we got to figure out that problem. Okay, because it's not that hard to make toilet paper. And if Scott can make it, Rangers can make it, then come on. I mean, it's like, we got to make toilet paper, okay? And let's make it out of cannabis. So, there's a huge opportunity there. At $5 a roll or whatever it is people are paying, I mean, come on. I think these are the things that we're going to have to start. I mean, once we're done with the protest mentality, I think these are the things that we're going to have to seriously start thinking about the problems that we need to address before we can actually get back to normal. I don't think we'll ever get back to fully normal, but at least we'll get back to a new normal that makes some sense. That's like 10,000 times a day. Okay. Yet I know that there's people who don't have toilet paper. They're not telling us they don't have toilet paper. Those were the people who didn't prepare. They did not prepare because they didn't think there was going to be an epidemic. They thought it was.
Well, one thing I'll say is you never should underestimate a human being's ability to resist change. We don't like to change. And until we have an experience like this, most people wouldn't change. Most people wouldn't say things like, we need to invest in long-term infrastructure repair in America. We need to invest in maybe a change in the way that we allocate resources and where our mind is at. Maybe we need to prepare for more problems that could pop up in the future. Perhaps this, if there's a silver lining to the entire experience we're all going through right now, perhaps this is the impetus we needed in order to launch forward toward a better society.
I was going to mention to Gus after he was done too, along those lines, Rick, that this whole thing has exposed how like thin of a line we run so many things, and how we're just so ill prepared to deal with like any really obstacle that of any significance that comes away. I also want to mention that we've been joined by Razor Ray Reyes. It looks like he's got a bong going on, and
hey there, everybody.
There he is.
Hola.
Is that a bong in your lap, or are you just happy to see us?
I'm happy to see you guys, and it is a bong in my lap, both at the same time.
Wow.
Wow, that's pretty deep, man.
That's like a double bonger.
You and two bongs, it's a legit threesome.
It is. Or two Pringle cans.
Hey Ray, we're joined here with Professor Gus Rosania. I hope you were listening in on some of this stuff. It is.
Yeah, I have been. It's pretty awesome. Good discussion, fellas.
Yeah.
But, hey, just to complete the circuit, real quick before we get back to talking to Russ a little bit more intently, Ray, what do you think the cannabis community needs to do from a activism, advocacy kind of perspective right now? What would you like to see on top of what's already been achieved?
I'd like to see some cool cannabis fucking smoker clubs, like like a bar where we can fucking go and just smoke,
So that's what Jim said too. He'd like to see that. Yeah. If social clubs exist, he would like to see that shit put in motion, and
like that, and
reality,
and then and going to and being able to go to a club and smoke pot inside of there and watch a band play. Oh fuck yeah. You can't just go to the Blind Pig in Ann Arbor and just, I mean, you could at a Harm's Way Life Sucks Get High family
I
show.
was going to say, I've been in bars and smoked it when bands are playing before.
Yeah, for sure.
Certain
But
bars.
how
US
cool would it be to
12.
go to a bar where it was like, okay, we're not serving any weed. We're not serving any beer. We're serving weed, you know?
Well, I mean,
kind of bar.
We've had that
exactly
up here in Genesee County.
right.
We really have had that up here in Genesee County, and it was very successful right until the coronavirus crisis, and wonderful venue that even hosted Snoop Dogg one day. So
lots of good things.
The reality here in Michigan. But,
lots of great shit. Yeah, it's just not official. It's pretty local. That's why. Not accepted statewide yet, but it's a demonstrated model that a lot of people like and that functions well. So.
Well, there's a couple though that have
really
been in the Detroit area. I'm not even going to name names, but I know you guys know what I'm talking about, and they're struggling. I mean, it's hard to set up a structure where you're going to pay all the bills, and you have to. They're doing it to where people have to buy memberships, and it's expensive.
There was a place
you commit yourself to it. You commit yourself to that's my weed source. So. It's kind of expensive, and I don't see anybody really have a successful model down here in Detroit yet. So we'll see.
There was a really cool place that I went to one time in Canada with Nick Zattel, and it was basically like a bar, and you could like rent out dab rigs and bongs and stuff from it. But they had like vendors come in from like different companies in like Vancouver that weekend. And Toronto. So that would be kind of like a cool thing. I could see like different vendors coming in and hosting an event inside that like venue, and I don't know. I could see, yeah.
Just wanted to give some acknowledgement to some folks watching live on Facebook. Famous cannabis chef Gigi Diaz from Detroit. Thanks for joining us, Gigi. Zoe, Greg, Krista Beller. Love you guys up there. Colleen, Lauren, Gauci. What?
Nice.
Lauren.
Just a ton of folks are watching right now. Colleen Keys, Justin, Steve, Bill, Mike, John, Mark Passerini was watching. Aaron Starkey, Steve Federico, Karen, Colin. Lots of folks. Thank you for joining us live today.
Nice.
See everybody.
So I got to send a picture of the check for the hash bash committee.
Aaron Starkey, Steve Federico.
Somebody's got the Facebook on.
Lots of folks. Thank you, because they want to listen to my voice, which I can't blame them for.
There you go.
It's not me.
Not I. I know what you sound like.
Yes, some money was raised for the hash bash committee during our digital hash bash that we had, and you just reminded me because you mentioned that Mark was watching a little bit, and also later on we're going to kind of go over. Might throw most of this on Rick, but we've been asked to kind of go over the licenses that are available, just some really basic info that we can pay from time to time, and then we need to revisit. So toward the end of the show, we'll go over
What's
that.
happening now?
For those
Basic stuff.
I want to continue to talk to Gus a little bit while he's here. Unless you want to sit back and listen to us talk about licensing, Gus, that's up to you.
No.
I'm fine.
I'd rather have him involved in it. To hang out as long as you need to.
Fun,
I got a question for Gus.
Sounds too much like work to me. I don't know.
Work.
What you got, Derek?
So Gus, I was hoping that you could just like shine some light on a Facebook post that I saw you make. I stalk you from time to time on social media. You can forgive me. But I saw that you had the opportunity to kind of inform the state police over some of the effects that people might have when consuming cannabis and then driving. So I was interested to just ask you how that went. And I had some concerns when I saw those same cops wearing drunk goggles in the meeting. So I was hoping that you could explain and just like shine some light on the correlation between the drunk goggles and driving under the influence of cannabis.
Yeah, no, I mean, there were like very different things going on at the same time, but I think at least the Ann Arbor police, I don't know about the state police, Ann Arbor police, because these were Ann Arbor policemen, it's clear to them that it's about impairment and not cannabis. This is very much consistent with a report that was, that was commissioned by the state in terms of how the levels of THC in the blood relate to the level of impairment, where the expert advised, the expert guidance said that you couldn't draw any conclusions, and that it's actually irrelevant to say that, you know, you have X, Y, or Z THC level in the blood, and that because you have that level, you're not able to drive, you're impaired. So that association was deemed to be you know, inconsequential. It was deemed to be non-existent, irrelevant, and those were the experts. I mean, it was a panel of really top people, scientists, and you know, from all different you know, relevant backgrounds, commenting on that. So I mean, there's nothing that I can say that could be an improvement over this existing report. And I think the Ann Arbor police is very clear about that. I mean, because, you know, it's not just me. I mean, there's plenty of people who are pretty well versed in terms of cannabis and what it does in Ann Arbor. So so they're very mindful of that, and you know, because yeah, they're going to encounter cannabis often, in, you know, THC in the bloodstream of people in Ann Arbor. So they're very mindful of that, and they say, look, I mean, the only way we can make this rational decision in terms of who we may want or not want to jail, you know, who poses a hazard, would be based on the level of impairment. So you know, so that's what it was, and it was very rational. They have these drug impairment specialists that get you know, officially trained, and there's an inter-police agency that will train these special police officers. And in terms of, you know, what they do, you know, in terms of how impaired you have to be, I can tell you, you have to be very impaired for them to act upon anything that you know, that you may be doing while driving. I mean, it's like they actually explained to us what was the level of impairment, and you had to be very, very impaired, you know, to fail their test. So
like, how is that decided? Like, how would you say that this guy is more stoned than this other guy or girl?
Well, you know, so there's two things about that. So it's these functional test. Okay. So, you know, like, well, you know, you gotta walk the line, you know, and whatever, you know, you gotta do it while holding something in your hand, and you know, so all these things, and you can say, well, you know, like, these things may not hold up in court. Okay, that's what somebody may say. Oh, you know, like, you're doing this is not gonna hold up in court, and I can tell you, it makes no difference. Okay, whether or not it holds up in court, because what you want is, if a person is at that level of being impaired, you know, then you don't want to be driving. That you don't want them to be driving, and it doesn't matter whether they're on anything or not. I mean, you know, like, they could just be people that have Alzheimer's, okay, that shouldn't be driving. You know what I mean? I mean, like, there's plenty of non-drug related, you know, conditions that
just being too tired is a really horrible.
Not able to drive, you know, and you want those people off the road, okay? And in my opinion, you know, that's a valid test. You know, it's just a way to take people out of the road. You know, whether or not it stands up in court, you know, you know, I mean, as long as you know, those people are taken out, that's as far as I can, you know, that's as far as I care. I mean, after that, you know, well, it's about the lawyers and the legal system, and you know, what it takes to make sure that somebody is not, you know, over and over and over again. But I don't think that's a problem with cannabis patients, you know, that they would go out and drive while being impaired. I think, you know, people who are using cannabis are very much in a position to make judgments, okay, and to make the judgments correctly, unlike people taking alcohol. You know, people who are drunk, they're in no position to make judgment. People who are using cannabis, they are in a position to make judgment. So it's just a very kind of very different kind of decision making, and that has not been actually taken into account in the equation as to how things should be done in terms of how to regulate cannabis and driving.
It's not like how much you consumed, but in your own opinion, how impaired you actually are.
Yes. It's how impaired you actually are. And I think the people who are using cannabis are very much aware of their level of impairment, you know, and they also maintain their level of social responsibility, you know, like they'll be able to say, I mean, this is just my opinion, you know, because the science hasn't been done, you know, but if they actually wanted to do the science, they could do it, you know. It's whether the person retains the responsibility, you know, so the ability to assess their mental state, their level of impairment, and their ability to make a responsible decision. Okay, that's, I think, what needs research. Question: cannabis is going to be outside of that. Okay, people are perhaps going to be more responsible. Okay, under the effects of cannabis.
In some cases, for sure. Yeah.
With more slower driving, less wobble, less opportunity to sway across the
Those with
line.
attention deficit issues sometimes focus better.
We just saw those results from that recent test, from that recent paper.
But Rick, but even those tests, you know, the way those tests are done is actually they will stick the person into a simulator. Okay, I mean, they will force them to drive. You know, they say you're driving, okay, and that is only part of the equation, okay, because there's another part as to whether that person would actually get himself or herself into a car, okay, and that question is not asked.
Yeah.
Okay, they're just thrown in there, you know, and it's a simulator, so they're not going to hurt anybody. Okay, so there's not the moral feedback. Okay, so they're removing the moral feedback, and they're removing any reason for this person to say, no, I'm not going to do this test because I'm too fucked up. Okay, that just doesn't come into the equation. And I would say that is a big difference between the person who is using and maybe abusing cannabis, using too much of it and being intoxicated, versus a person who is abusing and being intoxicated with alcohol.
Well, so what you're really talking about is
that is a crucial question.
I'm sorry, Gus. You're talking about the methodology used, and that oftentimes in science, methodology determines outcome. And that oftentimes during the war on drugs, we saw science experiments specifically attuned to achieve a certain result, which was to prove that cannabis was harmful or was a detriment to society. And those scientific experiments were keyed to that. It's possible to do that poorly, and it's possible to do that well, right?
That's absolutely correct. So that there may still be an intrinsic bias in terms of how people are thinking, how the funding agencies are funding these studies. And the bias is to demonstrate that cannabis is actually a problem. And, you know, the starting point is biased, because if there was a less controversial, I mean, not even controversial, but if the studies to show that cannabis was beneficial were actually allowed, then those questions may actually be asked, you know. Does cannabis improve driving? Okay.
So speaking of that, Gus,
and then we may even, find that they improve driving under certain circumstances. You know,
right.
Like whether or not you may drive in a dangerous situation, like if
you're not high,
gas on empty. You know, I mean, you maybe on cannabis, you know, your gas is only, you know.
Squeaking through.
House, you know, 20 gas station, maybe you would have, you know, but I mean, I'm just saying, you know, so maybe that kind of decision making, you know, may and I think it could really affect the whole equation, and it's just those questions are not being asked. So,
Gus, I just have to say that your bandwidth is really low, so you're coming across quite choppy. So we'll probably have to settle down on this conversation, I think, then.
Hey, so Gus, there is some movement. I know, like the federal government has allowed for like a few different strains to be grown for the purposes of research and a couple other things to pave the way for some more research to be done. Is this all too little too late for the kind of stuff you're talking about? Or is it a matter of time before you're able to see research or be involved in the kind of research that you're looking at doing?
Yeah, so cannabis, I think it has to be completely descheduled so that it can really reach its full potential. And we need to explode cannabis, especially under the current economic conditions. And I think getting out of this, of the recession, of this economic slowdown, the unemployment that is currently happening is going to need something like cannabis. People are going to have to farm something, go outdoors, go into the open fields where your viral transmission is minimized, and find something that's very labor intensive and that's profitable. Okay, and we can do this with cannabis, and it's not just for medicine. It's for food. It's for fiber, for polymers to make chemicals. And then all the products that we can derive from that. We can also use it for soil decontamination. Potentially, we can plant it with other crops, and it can function as a herbicide, as a pesticide, as to restore the soil. So all of this needs to be happening right now. And what we need to think about is, how do we explode this? I mean, I'm no longer thinking, okay, I'm going to go and do my research and try to figure out a better strain of hemp that could be used to, get some CBD out of it. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm thinking, well, how can I just explode this? Get it descheduled, right? I mean, that's what we need to do. So, I mean, otherwise, I don't see how we're going to get out of this job situation. I mean, 20 million jobs, it's huge, right?
There's another thing that gets exposed or created by this situation here. We really need this. I mean, more desperately than ever before in history.
We need something really quick. Okay, we're in serious trouble right now with the economy, with the jobs loss, the fact that restaurants are not going to be able to open as they used to, and there's going to be all these social distancing guidelines, and this is going to go on at least for the next, I don't know, maybe 9 months. But it may, as I say, this is probably the first of many epidemics to come. We're going to have to put this in practice so we can be ready for the next one and the next one and the next one. And what is going to allow us to do that while maintaining some semblance of normality in terms of our economy, in terms of our society? I mean, the only way I can think of doing this is with cannabis. It's with cannabis. It has to be. I cannot think of anything else. I mean,
it doesn't surprise me that we would turn to cannabis to solve our problems created by the crisis. Obviously, we just removed some of those fetters that stopped us from embracing cannabis for almost a century. Now we really have an opportunity. Remember, I said people resist change unless they're pushed. This is a big push. And if cannabis as an industry is more fully explored because of the COVID crisis, again, I'd count that as a silver lining.
Go ahead, Gus. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'm just thinking I think there's two types of people. There's the introverts and the extroverts. And for the introverts, this virtual reality thing is cool. Like, I'm an introvert, so I can be at home. I can be in front of a computer screen doing this VR stuff, teleconferencing, computer stuff the whole day. But there's people who need to get out there. Okay, there's people who actually like the hustle and the personal interaction, and they thrive from this, and they're just not gonna get it with this social distancing guidelines. And it doesn't matter, like, whether or not things are open. I mean, there are gonna be issues. Okay, there are gonna be people wearing masks, and then there's gonna be a lot of people who are just wanting to have the social distancing guidelines. Okay, I'm not going to go to a crowded place anymore. Okay, some people may not mind, but half the people will. Okay, and businesses are going to have to acknowledge that new reality, and many businesses are just not going to be able to survive with the way that they were used to doing things. Okay, and we need something. We need something now. new, something that it's got high profit margins, high potentials for growth, that can be transformative all across society, and cannabis provides that.
Cannabis industry was already constructed prior to the COVID-19 crisis. We were already on the upstroke when this hit. If there was going to be one thing that helped to save us, it wouldn't be something we constructed from new after the ashes of this crisis. It would be something that was already pre-positioned prior to. And I think everybody agrees the cannabis industry is just on an uphill slope that's almost unstoppable now. If we tied that success to a restoration project or infrastructure projects, I think the nation and the planet would be better for it. Certainly carbon sinking, crop rotating, remediation properties, all the things you mentioned, Gus. There's lots to love when you start looking at the cannabis plant.
We haven't even started putting in manufacturing
Right.
place to use the more fibrous kind of versions of hemp to make all the other tens of thousands of products that are
And
available.
then
Starting
hemp seeds,
like the food and CBD type stuff to get started with.
hemp seeds is a superfood, as you mentioned, Jamie. The clothing, there's so many, the traditional things that we would normally say that would be best about our industry, we're not even talking about because we've got so much else to talk about.
Yeah. So the other thing is what the president did yesterday with hydroxychloroquine, which was essentially free advertising of a drug, okay, without any mention of side effects, potential fatal interactions, blah, 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 blah. Like anytime you get a drug ad, it's got to be full of these caveats and, side effects type stuff. What he did for hydroxychloroquine, he could have easily done for cannabis, okay? And he would have been on a much more politically and scientifically and medically safe side of things, believe it or not, okay? Because, we're prohibited from making these advertisements about drugs on media, on TV, on whatever, without giving all these side effects, okay? We can do something like that for cannabis. Hemp is a, CBD derived from hemp, that's a nutritional supplement. And, and he could, cannabis is a food. So he could have easily done it for cannabis. What he that from between today and November, because if he's willing to do that for hydroxy, why not? He's already behind him. He signed the farm bill. Why can't he do it? Right? So I think optimistic that maybe, he will be illuminated by the powers that be, and that he's going to do it for cannabis. Like he did it yesterday, that he's going to do it for cannabis. Yeah.
Okay.
That makes perfect sense. It would be a lot more in line politically with popular sentiment and with science, if you were to say that, instead of something that he has a financial interest in and that doesn't really have much to back.
I will say that just because he signed the farm bill doesn't mean that he backs hemp. He's made statements before about his reservations about cannabis. The current administration had many opportunities to either initiate or to encourage the legislature to handle cannabis issues, and it's been a no-go. As the person who's the de facto leader of the Republican Party at this point, he wields great power to initiate change, and he's completely ignored the cannabis issue. In fact, he's not just ignored it, he's threatened to say that I currently allow the states to decide their own cannabis policy that he currently allows. So there's been a lot of inklings that this particular administration, if they receive a second go at it, the second 4 years, not necessarily going to be 4 great years for our cannabis industry. Plus, there's been an opportunity for them to fix banking on a federal level, and it's been resisted by the Republicans in this administration.
The request for information from Weed Maps is a telling sign of kind of a new direction that hasn't gone on before, and this is under this administration, so it's not good.
Well, we just saw, by the way, just new today, they are withholding money from universities, which allow medical marijuana consumption by their students on campus. There's a special program for an anti-drug program, which is designed to stop roofies and stop methamphetamine on college campuses, but yet they've decided to tie that to allowing medical marijuana. So that's something that this administration initiated. So.
Yeah, what really sucks about that too, maybe Gus got something to say about it as well, but like we would say all along, people would be reluctant on campus to do activity or be involved in stuff because of the threat of being denied federal funds for cannabis activity. And we would oftentimes say it hasn't really happened yet. And if it makes sense kind of, and the state's allowing it, the state university, all that kind of stuff, should do it. So the fact that some places decided for the purposes of like harm reduction and to be helpful and things like that to allow for it under certain circumstances only makes sense. And so now they actually are getting cut off from funds. So there's no more like saying, hey, I haven't really seen it happen in practice yet, but this is it in practice. It really sucks.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I would say that the president is pretty open about cannabis, that he actually doesn't care, that this is not part of his agenda. And what is missing is somebody who is close to him that says, hey, you know, you can get vote if you say this. And he'll say it. I mean, somebody's telling hydroxychloroquine, you know, somebody's whispering that in his ear. Okay, it's not that he goes off and says, I'm gonna, you know, seek for the next potential treatment for COVID-19, and he discovers hydroxychloroquine. No, somebody whispered that into his ear, you know, hydroxychloroquine, and then he says it, you know, and then he just says, okay, this is what I need to get elected, and then he'll just go with it. I think somebody needs to whisper and we're just not doing it. You know, we need to get, I would say it would be through Ivanka. I think we could get it through Ivanka, or we could get it through Pompeo. Okay. And the reason why I say that is because Ivanka and Pompeo have both been to Colombia. They have both visited Colombia. I'm not sure what they have been doing there, but if they went to Colombia, I'm sure the cannabis topic had to be touched upon somewhere in their conversations, if not very often. Colombia legalized cannabis, and it's currently in the process of setting up an entire regulatory system for producing medicinal cannabis. So I'm sure this had to be part of the conversation. I cannot imagine that it wouldn't be, because cannabis is very important to both from a and a military defense, from a health and a, you know, and an economic perspective. So if both have this issue in front of them because of these trips that they've made, and they could easily, you know, give time to, you know, some cannabis lobbyists and help move this issue into the president's office. So, you know, and for all we know, Ivanka, you know, may have already tried cannabis, you know, and maybe Pompeo as well, if the president hasn't himself. So I think that would be a way to get his attention. And
Gus, that's pretty frightening to think that the future of the cannabis industry in America might rest on Ivanka Trump's shoulders.
I have zero faith in Ivanka. Yeah,
it's a chilling concept. But your point is well made, though. That
hey, it's weird how shit happens. Little political quirks here. It happened in our.
It has to be somebody, Michigan. But I don't think it's going to be her.
What you know, it's who you know. Sometimes, and the way that Washington is set up, the swamp is still very active. Lots of alligators out there whispering things from the pharmaceutical industry, saying, "You know what? We haven't figured out a way to make money on this yet. Hold on."
Yeah, but I think. Sorry, but I think Ivanka has two sides to her. You know, there's this political persona that she puts forth for the media and maybe even her father. But then she's another person when, you know, she goes to Colombia. Okay, and you know, everybody has different personalities under different circumstances, and all you see from Ivanka is the political figure. You know, you don't really see who she is. You know who Donald Trump is because you've seen him in The Apprentice, and and then he's made a lot of interviews, but we really don't know who Ivanka is. And I suspect that she has a much softer side from or maybe harder side. I don't know, because cannabis, but at least a more botanical side to her. That she may be a plant lover for all we know, and she may say, yeah, I mean, there is no reason why any plant should be illegal. For the same reason that a dog should not be illegal, for the same reason that a cat should not be illegal. She may feel the same way about a plant, and that's one thing that I haven't seen anybody be keen on exploring. And there's that possibility. So I'm just leaving it out there. So that's as much as I want to say about this.
Hey,
I understand. I do. Yeah.
Hey, reasonable and interesting, and little quirky shit like that does happen sometimes in politics and changes directions of things. So it's, I'll take it any way it can possibly happen. No question. So you've mentioned before, and I think you said 9 months. I think you were alluding to the time period where we'd be, in the more intense behavior of masks and distances and less activity being allowed and that kind of stuff. But you do also think that we're doing masks and keeping reasonable distances and kind of making that change for longer than just the next 9 months, don't you?
Yes. Yeah, because COVID is just one of many viruses, and what COVID has done is expose pervasive weaknesses, across the whole system. And I can't see all those weaknesses being, all those holes being patched in fast enough that we wouldn't have to adapt socially and just make social distancing pretty much the norm. And this is not, some individuals have no problems, but there's plenty of individuals that do have problems with getting infected. If you have relatives who are sick, or you have relatives who are elderly, I mean, you're going to be not wanting to, expose your loved ones by you yourself getting contaminated by going to these very crowded places where people are not wearing masks. So I suspect a lot of people will just stop going to businesses, and social distancing will just be the norm. Businesses won't be as full as they were before. Whether people want it legally or not makes absolutely no difference. And I think that's going to be happening moving forward. And what's going to end up happening is probably businesses will not survive, okay? Because businesses require a certain number of people to have a business, and there just won't be that many customers there, and they will not survive. And we don't know which ones will survive and which ones won't, but certainly they're going to have to adapt to the social distancing in order to survive. Otherwise, you just can't have your traffic flow being cut up by 50% and still be expected to survive as a business.
Right. Hey, I will say this, coming from Facebook, Adam Brook suggests the newest cannabis strain, Ivanka.
Oh,
Ivanka Kush. Nice, huh? That's a good call, right? Yep.
That might sway her. That might get her, Adam.
Milberg from Medical Monday says hi. Yeah, we have so many people watching. Adam,
I want to get Berg and Roach, back on our show. We've had a really fun time being on Medical Mondays lately, and
right,
those guys on.
Such great communications
with us. Yeah.
Thanks a lot for everybody who's watching and participating. Again, we're speaking with Gus Rosania, University of Michigan professor, who has a class specializing in cannabis. Gus, it was a revolutionary thing when you got the university to accept your suggestion of a class focused on cannabis. How significant has that been for the university, and what's the next step in cannabis-based collegiate education at the U?
Well, I think the main thing is that the students who have taken the class have just been absolutely outstanding students. So the class started out being essentially advanced class for juniors and seniors who have had their introductory molecular, biochemical, and genetic courses, and who have had organic chemistry courses. So these are pre-med type students. They're in their senior year, so they're about to graduate. Okay, these are really smart kids, super smart kids that have gone through some of the most rigorous courses at the university. Okay, and I was able to get 45 kids in that class, and I've repeated that twice. And these kids are just amazing. Okay, they're brilliant. They're entrepreneurial. They're mathematically, math wizards. I mean, they're everything. And then they know cannabis. Okay, and they wanted to learn this, because they're intellectually curious, because they want to learn. I mean, they're not the ones who don't want to work. Actually, they're the ones who want to be productive. They want to work, and they want to know what's up with this thing that is attracting so much attention from many people, and that's just being dismissed. And they're just blown away by the class. And I bring a lot of expert lecturers from all over the university, and also from Ann Arbor. I mean, we have a lot of people who are just very knowledgeable about cannabis, and we benefit from listening to them. They all have very different perspectives, and they come from all walks of life, and they're doing all kind of different amazing cannabis related things. So the kind of student who are taking the class and what they have got out of the class, and they're they're telling this between each other, and they're spreading the word. It has just been phenomenal. So I'm just so happy I did it. Obviously, there's been pushback from the beginning. There's still pushback, but the interesting thing is, like, people are no longer laughing at me. So it used to be that they used to smile at me.
It's always a good thing.
Yeah, I'm teaching medicinal cannabis, and there was a giggle or a laugh. And but now they're no longer, people are no longer responding to it like that. I mean, they're actually looking at it very seriously. So
Anybody in that
right,
in that pool of very bright students that you're teaching in that class, ultimately philosophically opposed to anything that's going on in there about cannabis, makes the determination they're not necessarily
No, so the students now, young people now are largely neutral or favorable to cannabis, and I think they represent your average student at the University of Michigan, which I think is 95% favorable to cannabis. I mean, that's not unusual for students at college campus, and they're not all pot smokers. Okay, they're actually just regular students. I wouldn't say that this class attracts the students who smoke pot, or the students who are slackers, or the ones who are not slack. I mean, no, it's just very, very representative. I mean, the what makes these students unique is the fact that they have had to take all these very, very rigorous courses, organic chem and biochem and genetics, and that they're seniors, so they have actually gone through U of M education, and they're still there, and they're about to graduate. That's what makes them excellent. Other than that, while their interest is really good, and the fact that they come from all walks of life, and they have all this background and experiences, and they've come up with all these differences in opinion. Because some of them, they've actually tried cannabis, and they think of it more as a recreational drug. Others really have no idea, and they want to know more. They want to, they have been exposed to students who smoke pot in the dorms, and and they're curious about what it is exactly that these friends of them that maybe are not their best friends, but these people who are smoking pot, what are they doing? So some of those people are in the class.
So Gus, we know that you've got your class at the university. Everybody knows about Hash Bash taking place at the Diag on the University of Michigan's campus itself, but people may not know about some of the other things that go on at the University of Michigan. I've been fortunate enough to help lecture to your class in the past, but Green Wolverines, another organization based on the university that does large seminars for cannabis industry, specific for the business angle too. Dr. Sicily and some other folks have done professional athletes in cannabis seminars on university after the Sunday, the day after Hash Bash, several years in a row. Those are always revelatory. We've had some pretty big name former pro athletes talk about their use of cannabis, and scientists like yourself and Dr. Evan talk about the way cannabis interacts with the human body and why it might be advantageous. The university's really become a center of education and learning about this particular plant.
It has, you know, Ohm of Medicine even has added some to that with Evan's work with Dr. Claw and getting some of our studies published in the Journal of Pain. And that was really a big moment for Ohm to have that happen.
Some of the surveys of cannabis consumers that you conducted at Ohm in conjunction with the university, you're referring to specifically though, Jim, right?
Yeah, and we're doing studies right now as well. We have an ongoing study at Ohm that's continual.
And your customers and patients can opt into that and participate in that. Is that possible?
Exactly, straight from our website, ohmofmedicine.org.
Excellent. And do they have to make a purchase at Ohm in order to be able to participate, or is that something they could do even if they were just watching the show and wanted something to do after we end?
No, they can do it either way.
Fantastic. Great.
Thanks for asking.
Yes. Hey, so Gus, anything you'd like to? We're gonna go through at some point here soon the list of available licenses and some of the conditions thereof, because we've been asked to do that. Not spend a whole lot of time, but kind of run through that, come back to some basics and stuff, and offer that up for those who have requested it. But I want to make sure that, and you can stay on for as long as you'd like, please. But I want to make sure if you'd like to address anything in particular, just to make sure that it gets included in this discussion. Just want to make sure you have an opportunity to do that.
It has been great. You know, I think we should be figuring out how to plant cannabis now. You know, hemp. And you know, I don't know if anything's been done. I don't know where the state effort is. I mean, we just haven't been talking about it because of all the COVID stuff. And I think it's kind of fell off the radar screen. At least it's kind of fallen off my radar screen. And I think we need to retake that subject, hopefully very, very soon, because our time to plant is running out, and you know, we need to also prepare about what's going to happen when the crop comes through. What are we going to be doing with it? So I don't think in the first round, there was this program last year of the hemp research program that people didn't know what to do with it once they got it, and a lot of the people found their flowers to be contaminated with mold and what have you, and not to be readily, you know, sold to or ready for human consumption. So there, and I don't know what the results were of this first round program. It's only, you know, the kind of impressions that I've got, and this is something that we should have been reviewing now, okay? So that in this year's program, in this year's season, we would know what to do and what not to do, okay? And the fact of the matter is, we've got no clue. We've got no clue because the virus has distracted us. So, you know, so I fear for, you know, for Michigan and for this year's hemp research effort. Hopefully other states haven't done what we've done, which is, you know, become very distracted. I wish it wasn't like this, but you know, I think this is really blindsiding the whole country. This may be blindsiding the whole nation, this issue, that we're wasting precious time for planting hemp and knowing what to do because we haven't been reviewing our last year's research results. And there's only 2 more weeks. So maybe it's too late, but, you know, oh well, you know, I said it. So that's it, Jamie. That's as much as I want to say.
Well, that's awesome, man. And you know, and as we go on and talk about, if you want to hang out, feel free to chime in on whatever we're talking about. But that's, you know, want to make sure you get everything in that.
All right, cool.
So really appreciate it, and really
thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, no problem, man. We'll have you on again. Hopefully,
Cool.
And we'll
I'll hang out for a
get
little
on some
while.
things. Okay,
I hope you do.
That'd
Thank
be cool.
you. Hey, just to give some accolades, Dory Edwards is watching. Of course, Dory, long-term cannabis activist in Michigan's history. Karen Powell, my old gaming buddy. Paul Young's Vino Beasley from Flint, Michigan. Yeah, Vino. Lots of great folks watching this broadcast on Facebook Live. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Awesome. So let's run through the available licenses. It's kind of basic information, kind of surfacey and stuff, but there are some people who are confused about how this is all working. And I think the confusion comes from the MMFLA license that's required first before getting its subsequent MRTMA license, but that there are a couple exceptions to that with the micro opportunities, and that the state has created more licenses that exist now that are available as well. And so it's become a little bit confusing, and that's probably why there's maybe requests and need to kind of run through what's going on with this. And so obviously it started off with the MMFLA, which was created by the legislature, and it created the opportunity for 5 different kinds of licenses. And Rick, at some point, please.
Well, let's explain. Just MMFLA stands for Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act. So when we say MMFLA, that would be the medical law. When we talk about the MRTMA, the Michigan Regulation Taxation Marijuana Act, that's the legalization law. So there's the 2016 law for the medical, and then there's the 2018 law for the legalization.
Exactly. Okay. So there's it started off the MMFLA for medical, and with 5 licenses.
5 licenses being grower, processor, tester, transporter, and retailer. Okay.
And then those same 5 are available under the MRTMA, but to get them for now, up until another year or so, and it's at least a year, up to 2 years was from the time it got started. Where exactly it is and when it will be decided that it's no longer necessary, I guess is unknown, but it's up to 2 years that it could be. But you have to have the MMFLA license first before you can get its subsequent MRTMA license in full legalization. And then, but there are a couple of opportunities, micro garden, a Class A garden, 100-plant garden, a micro business, a fully integrated business with growing, processing, and retailing, but that is self-contained, doesn't buy from or sell to the wholesale market. And then the state has created, and for those you have to be 21 and over, Michigan resident, and a couple of other considerations as far as record goes. But in the MRTMA, if the issues are cannabis based and don't include children or being part of cartels or some other considerations like that, and that does not count against somebody for participation in the MRTMA. So people like Ryan and stuff like that can come into the fold under those circumstances now, which makes sense. And then the state has created a new set of licenses. And what are those, Rick, if you don't mind helping me out?
Well, what new set of licenses are you referring to? Excess marijuana producer license, things like that?
That, social lounge, event licenses.
So essentially, we talked about the 5 licenses for medical. Again, cultivator, transporter, tester, processor, and retailer. Those 5 still exist under the legalization program. Some of the parameters are a little bit different. For example, the amount of plants that you can have to qualify for a Class C, Class B, or Class A license are a little bit different. But there are a few additional licenses. One of the additional licenses is a micro grow. A micro grow would be just a 100 plant cultivation operation. That 100 plant guy could sell right into the direct market, just like anybody else, just like the 1,500 plant operations could. A second new opportunity is the micro business. The micro business incorporates 3 different aspects of cannabis industry: cultivation, processing, and retail, all on the same location, with the concept of being more like a craft beer type of an operation. There's an additional license which we created, which was called the Social Use Lounge. Social use obviously is, as we've talked about in this program, similar to a bar, except that you would have cannabis as opposed to liquor. Right now in Michigan, you could not have liquor and cannabis in the same licensed facility, or else that would be a violation of the liquor license. But in this instance, those are your essentials. Now, there were some additional things that were added. I mentioned earlier an extra processor license. And with the legalization program and with the medical program, you can have a whole bunch of stacked licenses. For example, if I have a facility and I want to grow 6,000 plants, I can get from the state 4 Class C licenses, each one worth 1,500 plants, and then I can grow 6,000 plants. But expecting that there is a huge demand on the recreational market, the Marijuana Regulatory Agency created a new type of license called an excess producer license. Now, naturally, you still have to be licensed to produce cannabis under the legalization program to begin with, but then you can apply for this additional license to grow extra plants. So you've got the basic 5 core industries plus a couple of extras. Now, the thing is, we haven't really seen some of those extras get realized yet, Jamie, have we? Social use lounges, micro grows, micro gardens.
Nope, not yet. But
the only ones that we haven't seen.
we're moving in that direction. The other thing I guess would should be said is that the legislature created MMFLA also has with it a lot more costs and associated with like the licensing and requirements and stuff like that. The MRTMA is a little easier on those things.
One of the things that the MMFLA requires is a seed to sale tracking program for each and every purchase and every plant in the entire program. The legalization program, they don't require, the state doesn't require the retailers to report each and every transaction that takes place. One of the things they needed to do with the medical program, they decided they wanted to put a purchase limit per patient on the provisioning centers that they licensed, so that each patient could only purchase a certain amount. In order to track how much you had purchased, you had to have a card that got swiped or your number got entered so that you did not exceed your purchase amount. With the legalization program, we essentially just do the same thing with driver's licenses. Wouldn't that be correct, Jamie?
Yes.
Yep. So you, without having to have a medical marijuana card issued, you just have a driver's license. So they're not really tracking the sales with the degree of certainty that they were under the medical program. So that's different.
So there's, from what I heard, there's a lot of holdups in all of the classes, but especially like from top to bottom when it comes to zoning. So once you acquire your state license, which actually seems like the easier part for some people, the real uphill battle comes with the zoning, right?
Well, there are 2 different levels of license on the state. The state's licensing is a 2-step process. The first step 1 is license the people. 2, the second step is license the business. The license the business is where you actually have to go and have a municipality that allows you to be there, and you have to fit within the zoning criteria, and your building has to have a certain number of parking spaces and all those things. But the phase 1, approving the people, that's where a lot of folks get stuck. Jamie mentioned previously that there were some really tough standards to hit under the MMFLA, the medical program. And he's right. They have incredibly difficult background checks that they have to make, financial fitness checks, federal
It was weirder when the
crime
board was in
monitoring
existence.
programs. Oh, it's crazy. They specifically, the legislature created all that stuff, not us, the legislature. And they did it specifically to discourage participation by all except the upper crust of society. And they were very successful in doing that.
The upper crust.
Well, it's true though.
You're very well.
They wanted to eliminate people that were involved previously, obviously.
Yes.
Supposed to be kicking the pants to everybody who's put so much blood and sweat into this.
You can certainly see that reflected in the comments of Don Bailey on the licensing board. Don Bailey was appointed to the board position and continuously espoused the view that all caregivers cheated the system, none of them paid taxes on their income, and that they should not be allowed an opportunity to participate in the regulated market. So that was a very prevalent attitude amongst legislators during the 2015-2016 legislative cycle when these MMFLA bills were being negotiated.
That was a strange time. That board came out of the gates trying to like shut everything down, and
Now the board started off.
Hey, recently Bailey and the guy from Sam, I can't think of his name at the moment.
The guy from Washington D.C. that helped
the one that
there's a letter to the editor thing that was.
He's not even from here. He's from D.C. Who cares?
And he's with SAM, Smart Approaches Marijuana, which is an anti-cannabis organization. But the important thing is he acknowledged Digital Hash Bash and the 420 broadcasts. So
He sure did. It was awesome.
Yeah,
He said, and they're even gathering online. That was hilarious.
Yep.
Merchants are gathering online.
Amongst the coughs and the clouds of smoke. Well, yeah, that's right. There were clouds of smoke. And
It was Hash Bash.
That doesn't invalidate the experience or what we were trying to do. So,
In 40 years as a cop, he understands everything there is to know about cannabis.
Well, we have to give him a shout out, except we can't remember his name. Whatever your name is, you dude from Sam, hey, what's up?
From Washington, D.C.
Short-term memory loss comes in handy. I'm glad I don't know what it is.
I know his name too. It's at like the tip of my tongue.
I know it too. Tim's bitching about him constantly on Safer Mish. Sneering about our buddy at Sam, so I can't remember what his name is.
I know his name. I know it.
Well, look it up, Colin.
No, it's not important. It really
not that
isn't.
important, though.
Yeah, we don't want to actually name him.
No, the editorial we're talking about appeared in the Detroit News last week. So if you're interested, you can certainly look it up. When it comes down to it, though, what it really reminds us is that all of the advancements that we've made, all of the businesses we've created, all the people that we stopped arresting, those are all good. We still have more to go. We still have segments of society that still don't believe in our beliefs. We have to change that. We have big sections of our state that don't have adequate coverage, either from physicians to certify or from retail outlets to be able to secure cannabis from. We also have a legislature that doesn't firmly believe in this program and wants to try and adjust, modify, or reduce it any chance they get. So we have work left to do. Nobody gets to quit. Everybody fights, and we do it till we're done, and we ain't done yet.
Damn.
How?
Well said.
Are you stringing
Just
your
end the
guitar?
show so we can just hold that into next week.
What?
Only I could play it.
No, go ahead, Colin. What'd you say, man? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, are you stringing your guitar, Derek?
Yes.
Somebody asked me.
Multitasking, yeah.
I can't play it, but I can string
Of
it.
course, Derek's claim to fame, the only accomplishment he has in his life is that related to Derek St. Holmes.
Yep. That's all I've done.
May have been named after him, possibly.
They say that's not true, but I say that.
Do you believe it is?
Not true.
That's why urban legends exist, my friends. They don't necessarily have to be true. They just have to sound true.
That one doesn't even sound true.
I was trying to keep it under the screen so I didn't look like a poser, but thanks for calling me out, Colin. Appreciate it.
Somebody asked me on my Facebook.
Oh, no, blaming it on social media. That's bad.
All questions must be answered if it's asked.
Yeah.
That's what we're there for. I
That's
hope that
funny
that going through the list of licensing and stuff like that wasn't. I mean, that was kind of off the cuff, and
It's really brief. That's a really brief coverage of a very intricate subject matter. So
there are many people out there. In fact, I had a conversation with somebody who helps out with the licensing and going through the application process and SOPs and stuff like that.
Richard says one of the areas we can improve, no picture on my medical marijuana card, says it's BS. You're right. Like 11 years. Give me a freaking break. Adam Brook thinks Kevin Sabet, but Adam, actually the co-author on that Don Bailey article was not Kevin. It's the Washington DC public relations representative.
Kevin is the main butthole.
He's the main dick.
That's who
of
I
the
was
organization.
thinking.
That's
He is
not
the
who
main
wrote the article.
orifice, like the orifice
Yes.
hovering above Jim Salame's head throughout the entire
Definitely.
broadcast.
Wait a
Just
minute. Where'd
waiting
he
for it to
go?
sink down and envelop it. Suck him right up into it.
Oh, Gus left.
Oh, there it is. Jim, speak so we can see your huge orifice.
Hey, what I'm saying is this is for dead in the sound,
Angel's halo.
completely dead in the sound.
That's what it looks like to me.
Great room.
I love it.
Angel's halo. I appreciate that.
He just slips in and out of there, and we don't even notice.
Looks like a parachute.
Yeah,
but
there it
yes.
is. And you'll find I have foam all over the walls. And
Oh, stop.
An angel's halo with a canker sore.
Foamy sphincter. That's not good. Foamy sphincter is a bad disease.
And here
Oh,
we
man.
go.
Hey, I just want to say I'm proud to be part of the show because I was looking up some details to fill myself in. I went on Google and I typed in some licensing questions that I had of my own. And I saw about damn near all y'all names popping up on Google left and right. This statement by Jamie Lowell. Here's Rick Thompson talking about this. It's like I hear these dudes say it all the time, but it's
It's almost like you would have thought we would have done a better job covering that.
Yeah,
Ouch! That hurts, man.
Colin, you guys are awesome. Glad to be part of this team, though, for real.
Yeah, it's a lot of folks. It's a team win. Everything we've accomplished been a team effort. There's no single heroes in any of this. Adam Brook would disagree with that, but I mean, you know.
Bash,
One
bash.
guy.
Hey, so
One
so
laugh,
hey,
that was
hey,
it.
we're gonna close out, but real quick, Rick, you were just in Detroit News. Is that correct?
Yeah, Detroit News, talking about telemedicine. I'm sorry. Yeah, talking about all kinds of stuff. I'm sorry. I just did another interview about telemedicine the other day, and that's been on my mind.
Rick's kind of a big deal. So
I'm not. I just do.
He's got a swollen head.
How about congratulations to Kathy Gray, formerly of the Detroit Free
yeah.
Press, now
That is really
elevated
cool.
to the what? The New York Times now, right?
Yeah, correspondent for the New York Times.
She's
Yeah,
outstanding. Very familiar with Michigan. She'll be a great asset to that
Oh yeah,
organization.
yeah.
Yeah,
very
she took
thorough.
over the cannabis patrol when they moved Bill Leitner to a different beat. She took
Right.
over.
I imagine you give her the assignment, and then you can trust that it will be competent.
Yeah, she's good. Good people.
You know, years and years of coverage of news, different things too, not just cannabis. She's a veteran, and it's a good move up for her.
Yeah.
So anybody?
Oh, I got an event.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask. You didn't have
Oh,
to
that's right.
waited, assumed that that's what I was going to say, and then finish, and then said, "Hey, I'd like to talk about my event." But
He's offended.
So tomorrow, Decriminalize Nature USA and Decriminalize Nature Ann Arbor, we're hosting like a virtual meeting together from 2 to 3. It's a Zoom call like this one. If anyone is interested in decriminalizing nature in your own Michigan city, and if you want to be on it, I would just go to the Decriminalize Nature Ann Arbor or USA page, and there's access to the Zoom meeting there. So that'll be cool.
sounds really cool, man.
We already have like
Do that.
a group up in Marquette that's already like planned.
Wow.
Awesome. Yeah. Excellent. So Ryan's going to be on Planet Green Trees Thursday night.
Ryan Basor of Redemption
Basor.
Cannabis.
Talk about the launch of the product line Redemption, as well as Karen McDonald is running against Cooper for Oakland County prosecutor. Thursday.
I will tell you that Michigan Normal is going to be launching a Zoom type Facebook Live broadcast once a week. It looks like once a week, starting on Wednesdays, like 8 o'clock at night. So that'll be coming, if not this week, then next week. Look for that too. Also, Ohm of Medicine just announced a new event, a virtual grow seminar with DJ Short, which will benefit a wonderful charity, and that takes place in June. Jim, do you have details on that charity there?
You know, I don't have too much. I think it's going to be for, I think it's for food gatherers and for Prisoners Creative Arts Project.
That's what I remember, the Prisoner Creative Art Project. Thank you.
Prison Creative Arts Project.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't have all the details on it, but it's an incredible
Cultivation seminar with DJ Short, live streaming it and using it to raise funds for Prison Creative Arts Project.
What a great idea.
Basically what we said, but you know, just the headlines, probably more details, but sounds really cool.
There's a Facebook event for that. I'm sure that there's also other ways you can find out about that. We'll try and include a link to that on our Jazz Cabbage Cafe Facebook page, and I'll have it on the Seeking 420 Events Facebook group also.
Ooh, 420 events. Rick, what can you tell us a little bit more about that group?
Yeah, Seeking 420 Events. I've had that Facebook page. I've been doing it for a long time. I will take 420 events and post them on there. And if anyone wants to see what's going on, they can just peruse the posts of the different things, or people can post their own event on Seeking 420 Events. Of course, with the COVID crisis, all of the previous events that we had canceled or postponed. So most of those were wiped out. And now there hasn't been any posts for a while because we really haven't anything to plan for. But now that we do, it'll start back into the swing.
Very good. That's
great.
awesome.
Very nice. Well, unless anybody wants to get anything in before we go, I think that's it. And I really appreciate everybody involved. I thought it was really cool. I thought Gus had some really, really interesting stuff to talk about. And another
Thank you, Gus. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. See you guys.
See ya.
Yep.
Yes, Cabbage Cafe.